By now we all know that the power creep in Dragon Ball is insane. One episode a character destroys a mountain, and then 20 episodes later they're destroying the whole moon. Then after that, Piccolo does a double tap on the moon, then we have Saiyans who can destroy whole planets, then we have characters that can destroy bigger planets, and solar systems, and galaxies. At a certain point, you gotta wonder, is it even possible to store this much energy in such a small amount of space? Well, it turns out there is a limit. If you pack enough stuff into a small enough space, it'll become a black hole. The idea of a black hole made of pure light is called a Kugelblitz, and those were shown to violate quantum physics years ago. But as some have pointed out, the ki attacks in Dragon Ball behave more like plasma. If Dragon Ball characters do use ki to generate plasma for their attacks, then this definitely could become a black hole, if they have enough of it. And we can get an idea for how much plasma they're producing based on the minimum amount of energy that they'd need to destroy the things that we see them destroy with their ki attacks. Before we get started, there's 3 equations that we'll need for each attack. First things first, we'll need to know how much energy goes into destroying something. For anything from a moon to a star, we can use this equation to find the gravitational binding energy of the object being destroyed. Basically, this tells us how much energy gravity puts into keeping an object together. This means that you would need to put at least as much energy into it to destroy it. Our second equation is possibly the most famous in all of physics.
I'm as dope as 2 rappers, you better be scared, cause that means alpha E equals MC squared!
What this equation means is that you have a certain amount of mass, you can convert it into energy in the form of photons of light. You can find the amount of energy in that explosion of light by multiplying the mass of the object by the speed of light squared. In this case, we'll be doing this in the reverse. If we know the energy needed to destroy a planet, then we can simply divide that by the speed of light squared to get the mass equivalent of the attack. Finally, once we have the mass equivalent of the attack, we plug that into the equation of the Schwarzschild radius of the attack. In other words, it tells us how tightly we need to compress the attack for it to become a black hole. For the sake of this video, we can combine these equations into one, which gives us a conversion rate for how much energy would be needed for the attack, and how small the black hole would be. In the second arc of Dragon Ball, we see Roshi perform the most insane feat in original Dragon Ball. He fired a Kamehameha over the course of 20 seconds of screen time, and that was enough to destroy the moon.
How do you like that, Obama?
Kamehameha!
On the moon, you idiot!
The moon has a gravitational binding energy on the order of 10 to the 29 joules. Roshi's beam is about a meter in diameter and takes 20 seconds to destroy the moon. If we assume Roshi's beam is a meter across and stretches 20 times the Earth-Moon distance, that would give us a volume of 24 billion cubic meters. With this much energy and this much volume, this attack isn't even as dense as the cork on a wine bottle. To turn this attack into a black hole, you need to compress it down to the size of a proton. Piccolo's moon-busting beam in Z is a bit narrower and destroys the moon faster. If we assume that Piccolo's beam has a cross-sectional radius of 30 square centimeters, and that it was as long as the distance from Earth to Moon, it would be anywhere from 7 to 37 times as dense as the core of the Sun. If we assume that he had all of that energy charged up into this ball around 4 centimeters in diameter, that would bring the density up to 40 quadrillion kilograms per cubic meter, which is 20 million times as dense as a white dwarf star. This would mean that Piccolo's attack would be so energy dense that it would overpower the force of electron degeneracy keeping atoms apart, but still not quite dense enough to form a neutron star, let alone a black hole. Jumping to the end of the Saiyan Saga, Vegeta threatens to destroy the entire Earth, and in the anime we see him destroy a planet before this. This would take 1,000 times as much energy as the attacks that we looked at previously. However, to make that a black hole, it would still be smaller than the smallest atoms. So when it comes to making a black hole, Vegeta's going to come up short. Moving on to the next saga, we have Frieza, who has destroyed 2 planets that we know of. Now, we have no way of knowing exactly how big or massive Namek is, but we do see Frieza destroy it with a ball around the size of a basketball. Frieza also destroyed Vegeta.
My son, the planet or me?
Yes!
We know that planet Vegeta has 10 times the surface gravity of Earth. For planet Vegeta to have 10 times Earth's gravity, we would need to increase its mass, which would increase its density. We could shrink the planet down like King Kai's planet, which would also increase the density, or we could keep the density the same and grow the planet. So our options are either have a planet that's tiny and dense, normal sized and dense, or really big and with a normal density. All of those would break physics in their own weird and wacky ways, so I'm going to get a bit wacky myself. We're going to make a ball of the densest element in the universe, osmium, and scale it up until it would have a surface gravity 10 times that of Earth. That would give us a ball 58 times the mass of Earth, and 2.4 times as wide. To destroy that, you'd need to put in 300 decillion joules of energy, or about 26 times as much energy as the sun outputs in a whole year. This ball would have a mass of at least 3.54 quintillion kilograms. However, this ball would still have a Schwarzschild radius that's 100 times smaller than the wavelength of visible light. Needless to say, a ball this big would not turn into a black hole. It wouldn't even be dense enough to become a neutron star. Frieza's Namek Destruction Ball could maybe become a tiny neutron star if it had the same amount of energy, but it would still need to be orders of magnitude smaller to become a black hole.
Well, Frieza, looks like you dropped the ball. Dropped the ball. Dropped the ball.
At the end of the Cell Saga, Cell says that he has enough energy to destroy the solar system. That would at least involve destroying the sun, which makes up most of the solar system by mass. To do that, he'd need to blast the sun with over 200 duodecillion joules of energy. To turn that attack into a black hole, he'd need to squeeze it into a ball that's 7.6 millimeters in diameter. It would be difficult, but Cell might be able to pull it off if he really squeezed a black hole together. Once we get past the Cell Saga, we have characters like Buu in the main series and Broly in the movies that are shown destroying entire galaxies. The same equations for stars and planets don't really work for galaxies, since galaxies are big sparse disks instead of dense balls of matter. And that's ignoring the problem of needing to move faster than the speed of light to destroy a whole galaxy in a single sane lifetime. To get an absolute bare minimum for how much energy these attacks have, we can use the largest known star in the universe and assume that Buu and Broly would at least be able to destroy that. The star BAT 9998 in the Tarantula Nebula is about 226 times as massive as the Sun, and a radius of 37.5 times that of the Sun. Plugging that into the gravitational binding energy equation, that gives us 10 to the 44 joules of energy needed to destroy such a star. And to turn that into a black hole, the energy attack would only need to be 5 meters across or less. If this energy attack from Buu has that much energy, then it would definitely become a black hole. And obviously Broly would be able to make a black hole because, his power is maximum. Before moving on to Super, I'd like to talk about one attack from Dragon Ball GT. Baby Vegeta's Revenge Death Ball looks like it could be a black hole, and it behaves kind of like one by sending Goku to a different space-time. Black holes behave like a hole punched into space-time as far as we can tell, so if you want to go to a different universe, then this is probably your best bet. Based on its size, if the Revenge Death Ball were a black hole, it would be around the mass of a brown dwarf star. That's around 10 times as massive as Jupiter, or 1/100th the mass of the Sun. To see what it would look like for a black hole that massive to suddenly appear over the Earth, I opened Universe Sandbox to well, that's not good. Okay, so a situation like this might be a bit extreme for Universe Sandbox to show in detail. In reality, most of Earth would probably be either cast out into space or stuck in an accretion disk around the black hole. But you get the idea. It wouldn't be good for Earth. As anyone who's seen Dragon Ball Super knows, that series takes the insane power creep of Dragon Ball and puts it up to 11. Along with that power creep, we have 2 feats that absolutely destroy physics. 1 feat during the beginning of the series, and 1 feat during the Tournament of Power. So, do you remember that time that Goku and Beerus punched each other so hard that it shook the entire universe? Well, in the real world, we have a name for vibrations in space-time. They're called gravitational waves. Gravitational waves are produced when massive objects like black holes or neutron stars swing by each other or collide. The first gravitational waves were detected back in 2015 using a giant L-shaped laser setup capable of detecting stretches and squeezes in spacetime as small as 1,000th of the size of a proton. Now, allow me to rephrase that. The most energy-intensive collisions in real life produce gravitational waves that are less than 1,000th of the width of a proton. Meanwhile, the waves that Goku and Beerus produce look like they're more on the order of meters. So, only quadrillions of times bigger, but no big deal, because that's not the crazy part. The crazy part is that immediately after this, we cut to those same vibrations being felt in the land of the Kais. Quick Dragon Ball cosmology lesson. The land of the Kais is over here, outside the regular universe. For those waves to literally shake the whole universe, and even things outside it this quickly, those waves would need to be going at least billions of times the speed of light, if not instant. This is pretty crazy considering that in reality gravitational waves travel at exactly the speed of light, as far as we could tell. But you know what? That's okay. Dragon Ball doesn't take place in our universe. Maybe it takes place in a universe where the speed of light is like 1,000,000,000 times faster. That would allow for things like flight between planets or gravitational waves that travel across the whole universe in an instant. However, black holes are defined as objects so massive that light is not fast enough to escape. That means that if we massively increase the speed of light, then any black hole that we do see in the series becomes insanely more massive.
Foreshadowing is a literary device in which...
Okay, so let's talk about the black hole attack in the Tournament of Power. Now, I know some people say this isn't a real black hole, but they literally call it a gravitational singularity that light can't escape. Just don't ask me how they make it heart-shaped. Now, people have already done the math, and based on the size of this thing, it should be about 3 Jupiter masses. However, if the speed of light had to be 1,000,000,000 times faster for some reason, that would bring our black hole mass up by 18 orders of magnitude, making it as massive as a galactic supercluster. That's the mass of thousands of galaxies squished into a point at the center of an event horizon. And you know what Goku does? He just stands up and says, "Hey, your gravitational pull is pretty strong. Let me fight it." And then he does! Power scalers, get your man! He's out here making the Flash look like a statue. But this brings up the question. If Goku was caught in a black hole, how did he manage to shoot something out to destroy it? Wouldn't any energy fired inside the black hole just stay in the black hole? Well, to be frank with you, it doesn't make sense. But I'm going to try anyway by introducing a new technique. I like to call it the Kamehame Hawking radiation. Hawking radiation is produced when a massive object like a black hole causes an acceleration gradient in spacetime, leading to a tiny bit of energy being lost due to what's called the Unruh effect. This is what leads black holes to die over the course of millions of billions of trillions of quadrillions of years. So you know, I'm sure Goku has enough ki to do it in a couple seconds. So yeah, to sum things up, any powerful character from the late Buu Saga onward should easily be able to make a black hole. I'd like to thank my channel's Patreon supporter Hydroxyl, all the YouTubers where I got my clips for this video, and of course the creators of Dragon Ball themselves. I'll see you next video where we'll be tackling a new topic in a game I already covered.
Drop the ball. Drop the ball.